Okay guys, I'm back. Screencast-O-Matic only lets you record for 15 minutes at a time. So to review, in that first video that I've given you this evening, yes, it's 5:30 already, I went through what close reading is, the difference between observation and interpretation, where your focus needs to be in this particular project on helping a younger reader get better at observation when reading. And then I also shared with you how I think that close reading strategies should be deployed in a balanced fashion to avoid what Kelly Gallagher, what he calls read-aside, right? Which is quite maybe alarmist, but nevertheless happens in classrooms where teachers continue to hammer strategies all day long, every day. Busy work is what students end up calling it. In any case, in this video, what I wanted to do is give you some examples of some close reading activities I have actually employed. The first one I'm going to show you is actually some practice I wanted my students to do. This is from a Film 2080 class, which is Introduction to the Art of Film Studies. And what I was trying to do here is show them what they could expect on the test, but I was also in class giving them an ability to not only demonstrate that they knew the devices that the directors used to put together film, so they could call them out by name, that they could not only discuss what they were, so what the definition is, but also how they are put to use, and of course what is the effect. So again, I consistently wanted them to practice on this day not just their knowledge of what we had watched, the knowledge of the kinds of terminology we had learned when it came to filling what I call a toolbox for any given genre, learning that genre's conventions, its rules, the grammar of film is what I call it in the film class. But I also wanted them to make certain that they could talk a little bit about how this technique functioned. And to do that, I was asking them here to put together the plot of this particular film as well as the technique. And what that shows me is that they understand how to apply the technique in context. And so I have some basic comprehension, and then I move into evaluation. Okay, so here, of course, this is from Rebel Without a Cause, this screen shot that I have here. And notice how I'm asking them to recall. Name the film, name the character in the shot. So again, that's plot, that's comprehension if we're thinking back to Bloom's taxonomy. Then I'm asking them to think about the toolbox, the conventions, name the camera angle. This is, and I would take two answers here, this is an aerial shot or a bird's eye view camera angle. And then of course, they would spend the most time, therefore they'd get the most points, you can see, just considering this was a practice for a test, on describing, applying here, how is this camera angle appropriate for this character in this scene. So taking the knowledge of what an aerial shot is and what it does, and then of course applying that to this particular scene, this particular character, in this particular film. And so again, I was taking them through some specific parts, all related to this particular frame of film here. And in doing so, not only were we practicing for the exam, but I was moving them from basic comprehension and memory of having watched Rebel Without a Cause, discussed its characters, and I'm moving into the technique of film. So again, the idea that they were building a toolbox for the genre. This is the first film that we studied in this class. And then the hardest thing, which again earns them the most points, is how is this camera angle appropriate for this character in this particular scene. So that's one example, a really short example of what I mean by showing someone how to closely read, in this case, a single frame of film from a movie that they'd watched. So that's something to consider. That's one way I've used close reading. I think I have something else here. Let's see. You can see me actually asking for specific parts, and I'm going to kind of connect that to what I had already shared with this class. In this class, they also watched the virgin suicide. So here I say to them, this is a short answer example. So again, we were practicing for a test. I was showing them the kinds of questions they could expect, and we went through these that day in class, and I even had them choose one to write as a practice. So let's just look at this first one. In the virgin suicides, the image of decaying trees recurs, and characters are connected to the trees in various moments. So I'm kind of asking them to recall the plot, recall an image, a salient image that we had discussed about the film. Argue one way that the trees are an important image in the film. So right here is the core of what they're being asked to do. It's an action verb. Argue one way that the trees are an important image in the film. That is their goal. And then I say to them, remember, present an argument in the topic sentence, offer specific evidence, and then analyze how the evidence proves your argument. And what I was doing here is reminding them of something that I've actually talked to a few of you about before, which is something I use regularly. It's an example of a heuristic, a mnemonic device, you might call this, for writing a cogent paragraph, a very cohesive, strong paragraph. It's called the meal plan. It's something I actually was downstairs many years ago, you don't even want to know how many, in the writing center and thinking through ways I might help my students write better paragraphs. And we used to have these file cabinets down there. This is again years ago, and I was looking and I found some stuff and I thought, oh, let me try to think of a heuristic, a pattern. And again, this can help my students not only in English classes, but it can help them as they approach history, biology, psychology, sociology, any class in which they have to write a paragraph or some kind of analytical, detailed paragraph. So the meal plan is simply this, MEAL. They can remember it. Everybody knows that meal plans are all the rage in college. You know, you're always being asked or hounded rather to buy one, right? But the meal plan here, MEAL, stands for M, the main point, and I say here, it's also the topic sentence. And what's interesting is that if we're thinking about a paper, the main point is the thesis. If we're thinking about a paragraph, the main point of a paragraph is the topic sentence. Evidence, and notice how I define that for my students here. Analysis, what that is, I even say it's the largest portion of any given paragraph. And then link. It concludes the paragraph and looks ahead to the next, so it links what you have said to what you will say. To go beyond just describing the parts of this heuristic to my students, what I did is, and I regularly update this when I teach composition, I actually gave student examples of utilizing the meal plan. So we had read Wit, a play, and so I took a student's meal plan paragraph where they had incorporated this heuristic, and I got permission and I gave them the student's example. And then in another one, I've taught Dead Poets Society, and a student had written a paper on a Midsummer Night's Dream, which appears in Dead Poet Society. So again, I like to use student examples when I can. It's really important to me to show other students how it can be done, not just how the teacher would do it, but how other students have interpreted any given assignment. And notice how I give them tidbits. You guys are getting this as kind of suggestions for success, right? So you're getting these on your assignment sheets as well. I use this regularly. I've used it from 7th graders all the way up to graduate students. This is something that anyone who has trouble with organizing paragraphs effectively can incorporate. It is a movable feast, a strategy that moves from class to class, subject to subject, from the core to the major and to the graduate program. Again, you can create strong, cogent strategies of your own that will help students develop. So this is just another example. Let me get away from this one and show you another for today. Let's see. Another place where I have asked students to develop heuristics or reading strategies is in peer review. Have you ever been in a class where you had to do peer review? I have. And one aspect of bad peer reviews is that teachers don't have a plan for those days. They don't have a clear set of directions that will help students talk to each other about their writing. One of the reasons students hate peer review is because they never know what to say. They feel on the spot. They struggle to comment on another person's writing, not only because they're asked to look at their peers' work, and that's hard just psychosocially, but also they're novice writers themselves. And so a lot of times they're not exactly sure what to say. Our job then during peer review is to provide them with close reading strategies for their peers' work. So here's something that one of my students put together for her students. So this is a while back. Notice how there's part 1 and part 2, right? And so this for her would take 2 class periods. She's deadly serious about composition. And I want you to notice just some of the steps here, and then I'm going to show you something I do for my classes. She actually gives them directions. So not only are they doing something, right? So they have something to write because the directions say to do it. So not only do they know, okay, I've got to circle some stuff, underline some stuff, bracket things off, but they are called upon to demonstrate their knowledge of what a thesis is, what a conclusion is. And so they are called upon to demonstrate their knowledge or comprehension of different parts of an essay, but they also are given a chance to label those, and they're given specific steps to do so. So up here, 1 to 10 on this sheet is for a partner. And notice how you absolutely need to have someone using another's draft to write. So that's important. Now, if you have a computer classroom, it may be that that doesn't happen, that you have people highlighting and bracketing and using different color fonts and things of that nature. But this, of course, is in fact all the teacher giving someone specific steps and strategies for, in fact, understanding another's work. It gives them something to write, and it allows them to feel useful. Underline a thesis? Oh, I know what that is. It usually comes at the end of an introductory paragraph. Doesn't have to, but usually does if you're a novice writer. So let me go to the end of the paragraph. Oh, adjectives, you want me to circle those so I get a sense of someone showing and not telling? I can circle those and I know what an adjective is. And so you're kind of pulling students into knowledge of writing by giving them very specific goals. Here's something I did in, 7 years ago, in a young adult lit class. You can see for pedagogy projects, I'm doing kind of the same thing now. My other student, she went a little more specific, but notice how that would be for young students. This is for a 4,000 level class. But notice how I'm also asking folks to label and consider, right? So I ask them to skim, answer questions, and then I ask them to take a look at underlining the claim, right? So I'm giving them what I need them to do. I'm asking them to think about the following questions, giving reasons. I'm asking them to think about audience, right? And then, of course, I'm then saying I want them to only look at one lesson from part two. So these students had to do a part one and part two with different lesson plans. This is more involved. But notice how I'm asking there.